Oil painting is so complex when you think of all the different ways that it can be handled, and so like I had painted in oils and done this really interesting project that one of my high school teachers suggested, which is let's investigate painting, only you're going to make all the tools that you use in order to create your painting. My own painting in those days was abstract expressionism. The wilder, the better. At the point, I think my drawing was better. I tried to paint representationally, but it's just really, it's hard, really. I do think drawing and then later watercolor were much easier for me than oil painting. And when I started painting outside, there was no way I could do it. I just could not, I couldn't make the oil paint look anything like what I wanted it to. And so actually there was a time when I spent an entire year just doing pen and ink and wash drawings, which was actually really fabulous because the complexity of reality then can be reduced to just 3 or 4 values that way. And that was the real foundation for learning to paint. I think young artists want to sort of take up the newest stuff first, and they want to carry on from what the latest thing that's been done is. And I was exactly like that. When I was sort of like really learning to be a realist painter, and I bought my first camera, then I learned to develop black and white photographs and stuff. Painting was really under attack. Like everybody said, you can't do that anymore. It's things have evolved beyond that point. It's not of our time, and so that's a pretty threatening argument. But I discovered some articles about perception. When you look at anything, how the brain processes the information your eyes take in. That is totally fascinating, and it made me realize that artists have really been way ahead of the neurobiologists, as the experimenters about appearances and how things change and, and how they look and how the brain, it's a deeply interesting thing, like subject matter and representation. If you look at a yellow-green, very bright yellow-green color, and you move your eye over to a white wall or something in the background, you're going to see a red-violet after image, see? So that is the sort of thing that's generated in very strong sunlight. So you're looking at these yellow-green leaves on the tree, then the gray bark is going to look reddish-purple, but you take a photograph of it and you don't get that because it's the dysfunction of the retina that you see that they can't. And so oftentimes the shadows in photographs just go to black and gray. Whereas if you're out in bright light, it doesn't, it has a different life to it. What it did is it gave me permission to be a realist and to also to use photography too, but to realize that, capturing something in a camera is not the way your brain is grasping the world. It's, but these cameras are they're so fantastic, they're so marvelous. In a way, it trivializes realism. I'm glad painting hasn't disappeared. It always is predicted that it's going to be over and it's disappearing. I had a chance to go to Europe. People there who were friends had said, okay, you've got to go to Italy. And so they gave me some addresses, places to go. I said, okay, I got to go to Rome. I ended up spending about 7 months actually going through churches, going through collections of classical art and stuff, and really thinking about, really getting a feel for the art history. And the amazing thing, so much of the art is still in place in churches in Rome. Like, there are paintings by Caravaggio in San Agostino that it's right there where Caravaggio put it, in the 1600s, and it's still there. And the matrix of this incredible Baroque architecture, it's pretty unbelievable, really. Places like the Sistine Chapel, you're really looking at something because it's like, the Greco-Roman tradition has come back to life. And somehow it's been magically melted in, like Hellenistic Greek art with these heroic nudes has been merged with the Old Testament Judeo-Christian tradition, and it's fused into this thing, and it's unbelievable ceiling. And then it's a story of the creation of the world and the end of the world. And it's like, this is one hell of a place. This is a great work of art and so forth. So anyway, I realized that these artists were people of great sophistication, and they really knew how to do a lot of things. And what did I know how to do? Like, I had decided, I want to be an artist, but basically I have to start over, because I didn't know, I knew rudimentary perspective and stuff, but it was a hugely humiliating experience to start from scratch. And you're like, 21 years old or something, and you thought you knew everything, and you realize you're just a beginner. So I have this big cityscape that I've been working on there. There's a building in Boston called the Customs House. Up at the top, there's this pyramidal structure, and then there's actually an observation deck where it's just open to the outside. These 4 balconies and these incredible views of Boston there. And so I was just so blown away by those views. And so I'm painting one of those. So I came to Boston in 1970, and I had gotten into a Master of Fine Arts program at the museum school. I wanted to learn the basics, but basically the museum school had a revolution, and so all of the sort of more conservative teachers had left, and it left the radicals sort of in charge of the school. And so that was a disappointment. But I thought, well, they gave me a scholarship. So I had met people who taught in the education department, and so I got a job teaching in the education department, teaching beginning drawing, watercolor, figure painting, all of these sort of things. Well, I had to learn all those things. I had to learn enough to be a little bit ahead of the students. And so, whereas my master's training was I did do sort of surrealistic work that enabled me to have an exhibit and a thesis and all that, but it was pretty much a waste compared to all these beginning courses I was teaching. I learned the fundamentals, and I spent a lot of time on perspective and things that I can't think of any other way I really would have done it. If I had been forced to learn all this stuff in school, I would have rebelled, because I would rather be with the anarchists than the people who tell you do it exactly like this with no deviation. That's always the kiss of death. But the teaching in the education department was wonderful. I don't know, it's all fascinating to me about how much of art should be innovation, because absolutely, you need innovation, but how much of it should be rediscovery, and how much of teaching about art should be passing on the lessons of the past, and I think from my time in the art school, it's apparent that we haven't spent enough time in transmitting the knowledge of the past, and in favor of just training people just to be innovative and not thinking about the past at all. That is an imaginary view of Rome. Rome is off in the distance there, but you have this scene of water and the lapping of water on these rocks and eroding away these geological layers there. And so the theme of that is sort of an allegory of yes, Rome is in its youth, 2,000 years ago, but the world is still very ancient. That painting over there above the door, that came out of the work I did for my MFA exhibition. It's a sort of a surrealist thing. It's an allegory of the creation as a workshop, but it's outside. It's not in a building. And then you look and you see that some of the tools are actually like jawbones with teeth in them that look like saws. Also, there is a device in that attached to that tree in the background that is controlling the direction of growth in it. So this is, this is an allegorical painting, and that one is, and I think those are brilliant paintings, even though everybody thought I was absolutely psycho to be doing them back in the day, because nobody else wanted to do anything like that. So I know galleries used to say, "Where in the hell are you coming from?" I had no idea what's going on. But I think today they would be much more interested, and they'd be accepted. It seems like every artist has a different path, and the key is sustaining your. You got to survive. Every artist who's ever lived had to make a living, and so that's, you got to use all your creativity just to to survive and to get a toehold, and somehow, and then not lose your aspirations. So I don't know, that the chances are really daunting, because you got to make so many sacrifices, that but if it's, I think it's worth it. I think you get out of it what you put into it. You will get better, and I also think the art scene is difficult because there are trends, that are so dominating, and everybody sort of focuses on one thing, and if you're not doing that, you really feel like you're out in the desert. You're so isolated, and so. But I would encourage young artists to, really get down into it very deeply, and stick with it, invest in it. Because I do think there's a great inner satisfaction that comes from being an artist. Your life goes by very fast, and you've got some evidence of what your life was. I think it's a privilege, and it's really very satisfying.